Yes, and here we are. We're live. Happy Thursday, everybody. I am so honored and excited to be with my friend and colleague, Ron Reich. He is an amazing master trainer. He knows the 7 essential things with Steve Covey. I mean, you've been in this development world for 30 plus years, right, Ron?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Time flies.
It's so exciting. You've worked with some of the top companies around the world. And first of all, thank you for coming. I'm just really excited. I love talking to you.
Elaine, my pleasure. You know that. It's always a pleasure to talk to you too.
So fun. We both are like personal development junkies in the best sense. So I know that you've done all kinds of work, but you did this Future Leaders program. And I know that right now in the environment that's happening, there's the mass resignation. A lot of people are not feeling happy. I know a lot of businesses are like, how do we keep people? How do we get people? So talk about, you want to tell us a little bit about the program, why you developed it?
Elaine, the Future Leaders program in which I was involved was with a pharmaceutical company a number of years ago, and what we wanted to be able to do was to indeed develop a pipeline of future leaders, just for people who were ready to move into management slash leadership positions when they became available. And just realizing that they had next to no management skills. And the problem that we used to run into often was that, and I saw this even before, way before the pharmaceutical company. I've done a lot of work with sales forces over the years. And the classic thing that used to happen all the time: oh, Elaine, you're a great sales rep. Therefore, we're going to make you manager now.
Right.
And it's just like, oh my goodness, what a terrible, terrible mistake. Unless you have the competencies and the desire to be a sales manager, because the competencies are completely different from being a sales rep and a sales manager.
Right.
And I mean, this when I was involved in this program, Elaine, it truly was the most fun I ever had in my professional career when I was in corporate. Just no two ways about it. I mean, what we used to do, first of all, there was a very rigorous selection criteria program. The potential participants needed to go through a series of interviews with a couple of us in management development. They needed to talk to the VP of sales. There was some writing involved. So, I mean, we wanted to make sure that they were indeed committed to it and that we were confident that they would succeed as well. And the way we structured it was they would come in for just a week of training, uh, go through the information that we did in week one, which included situational leadership, feedback, and just a lot of other things. Once they finished week one, they would go back to the field for 5, 6 weeks, whatever it may be. They would come back then for week two of the program. We would talk about, even though you're not a leader yet, what were you able to apply in your job that you learned here? And then they would go through week two of training. They would go back to the field for again 5, 6 weeks, whatever it was, and return for week three, which was the final week. And I mean, by the time they were done, Elaine, they were so prepared to become a manager. And we were also very careful not to just throw them into, okay, now you're trained, you're ready to be a district manager. It's like, no, let's move them in slowly. And we used to have them supervise one or two people for maybe 6 months, whatever it was, and then gradually increase the number of people that were reporting to them, and eventually become district managers. Uh, and I mean, again, Elaine, I'm so proud because I'm still in touch with a couple of the people that went through this program. There's somebody in Stacy, I think I know he's down south. I think he might be in Tennessee. It doesn't matter. And I talked to him a number of months ago, and it's been 10 years since he went through the program. And he said to me, Ron, he said, I hope you know the foundation that you provided me, because he said, I'm using that information every single day. Tracy's now a regional manager and has done
Wow.
very, very well.
It's so great. I did a lot of landmark training and they would talk about it's all training and development. Like anytime there's an issue, it's a training and development program problem. It's communication. It's there's so many things. And I know, working in restaurants for so long, they would often take the best waiter and and it's like they would teach them how to do like the closing skills, but they did not teach them how to manage human beings. And it was always like, oh God.
Elaine, I work for a company that shall remain nameless. And they did the exact same thing. They used to put people through a 9-day training program that focused on operations, profits, inventory, and everything that goes along with that. And we spent maybe a day, if that, on the people end of things. And
Yeah,
it's just like, this is crazy.
no soft skills. It's interesting because I feel like, thank goodness, I think corporations are realizing, oh, empathy, wow. So tell us about a little bit more. Why don't you go into the 3 R's or emotional
Yeah, yeah,
intelligence? Tell us
yeah.
some of your points.
I mean, the 3 R's, Elaine, it's something that I actually like to start off many of my sessions with. The 3 R's are results, reputation, and relationships. And in the course itself, what I'll do is break the class into small groups and just have them talk about which is the most important R of the three for sustained business success. And ultimately, what we come up with is that, you know what? There's probably not one R that's more important from the others. It's like a three-legged bar stool, and that all three legs need to be solid. Interestingly, though, I do tell the groups, I want you to pick one. And they've challenged me on different occasions. Ron, you told us to pick one, and now you're saying that all three are so
Right.
important. You pick one.
That's a trick question.
Exactly. That's what I get. And my point is though, Elaine, what I shared with them is that, you know what, everybody, back against the wall, if I need to pick one of those 3 R's, I go with relationships because I can't do the work all by myself.
Right.
I can't get everything done. I need help. And therefore, I want to have good relationships with people up, down, across any organization so that when I need help, people know me well enough and trust me enough and like me enough, frankly, where it's like, oh, sure, Ron, I'll be glad to help you. And I mean, it's helped me immeasurably throughout the years. You know what I mean? I think if you don't mind, Elena, I'll go just a little bit deeper, because it was interesting. I was doing a session down in Miami for an organization that's involved in the airline industry. We had the discussion about the 3 R's, and when it was over, one of the participants looked at his team, right? He looked at his colleagues and said, "You know what? This is really good. It's wonderful, except we really don't know each other very well here. I mean, we work together, yes. We don't know each other very deeply, and that needs to change."
Right.
And it was so interesting because what we ended up talking about was what makes a good work relationship? What does it look like, feel like, sound like? And I think a lot of times people think of work when they hear the word relationships, it's like, oh, I have to be nice to everybody. I need to be nice to my coworkers or nice to my direct reports. There's so much more to this. It's like, okay, and again, a work relationship. Yes, you need to know each other personally and professionally. You need to find out about the person's strengths, their limitations, their goals, their dreams. What are, again, where are they struggling? All of these things tie into relationships. And as you and I have discussed before, Elaine, this also all ties into psychological safety. Because without good, solid relationships, how can anybody feel safe at work to offer an idea, to challenge the status quo? And to challenge whether I'm going to challenge my boss on something or even a coworker. If I don't feel safe and we don't have good relationships, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to do it. It's not happening.
Ah, this is like music to my ears. I worked for a big corporate restaurant that was, had amazing volume, but the turnover, there was a lot of toxicity, and it was not psychologically safe.
Yes.
And I have compassion because all of the people, is very, investor focused, and the management was abused in many ways too. Like it was ridiculous expectations. Anyway, it was a lot of, I learned about like how I never want to be as a manager. I
Yeah.
learned a lot about what not to do. And I think one thing, if anybody's watching and you're a business owner or you're a middle management person, one of the things I know, so many times we're putting out fires, right? We're putting out fires, and sometimes we're dealing with urgent versus important.
That's right.
And, Ron talks a lot about when you can take the time to invest in your future leaders, the ROI is just tremendous. And, to even just stop and think, do we have any future leaders? And if we don't, how do we get some and how do we nurture them, right, Ron?
Well, and the other thing is too, Elaine, I agree with everything you're saying. The other big thing is too, how do we identify the future leaders in our organization? Is there a mechanism in place? It's not a gee, you look good, and yeah, maybe you could do this. And it's like, no, there needs to be structure to it. And I mean, people sometimes are stunned by the people who indeed, no pun intended, emerge from the interviews, from the criteria that you set, and you realize, wow, even though she's quiet and I didn't think she'd be good, she's one of the best we have. Just as an example. And Elaine, again, if you don't mind, you made me think of something when you were just talking earlier about the importance of relationships and everything else. I know I've told you this story. I was doing a session down in Atlantic City for a client, and it was a 2 day session. Some of the leaders were there, and some of the younger managers were attending as well. Day two, we were supposed to start at 8:30, so we were just chatting. It was probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. There were three or four of us, just standing there laughing, talking about whatever it was. One of the senior leaders walked in who did not have a good relationship with many of the people in this organization at all. The instant he walked in the room, everybody with whom I was speaking shut down, got quiet, and someone quietly said to me, Killjoy is here. And I was like, man, what does that tell you about the importance of relationships? And also that the senior leaders of organizations need to understand this. My experience too has been so often that people will get sent to training is like, Elaine, you need to work on this and you need help with this. And sometimes that absolutely is the case. So often people will say to me, Ron, I'm glad to be here. I'm learning an awful lot. Except, who really needs to be here? The boss and my boss's boss. And again, and it's sad because I think a lot of these organizations or a lot of the executives miss the boat, and it's like you need this too, because otherwise it's going to go nowhere if you're
Right.
not modeling the behavior or implementing the behavior what you're looking for in your
Yeah.
report. Man, where are we going?
Yeah, you got to walk the walk. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I think we should do a whole series because there's just so much to unpack here, and this is just so juicy. And so if people are like, "Oh my god, I want to talk to Ron," the best way is to reach out to you on LinkedIn. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Ron Reich, and he's got all his info on LinkedIn. That's the simplest way. But yeah, Ron is, you do training, you do consultations,
Yeah,
you can do workshops, you can
workshops,
all kinds of things.
organizational development work, really, really just the whole gamut. I've been so fortunate throughout my career.
Yeah, and like over what, 38 years? You started when you were 2? Is that
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not quite 38. I think it's, how much is it? I'm trying to think now. Actually, you know what, Elaine, you might get, it's close.
Isn't it funny how you're like, that was last year? Oh, that was 10 years ago. Yeah, getting older, crazy. But yeah, Ron is, one of the things I love about Ron, he's always reading. You have a thirst for knowledge and you're fascinated by human potential. And it's really who you are at the core. And that's why I love talking to you every time. We're like, and I think it's an exciting time because there is a lot of shift and change. And I think as businesses, everybody's had to pivot. And even though there's a lot of turmoil, it's exciting too. It's an exciting time, right?
Elaine, it is. And I mean, Stephen Covey says with the 7 habits, right in the beginning, in one of the videos he does, he says, he said, I've been asked over the years, do the 7 habits still apply? And as the world changes, is training and development still going to be applicable? And his comment simply was, it's more applicable than ever,
Ever. Yes.
because the skills that we talk about in these sessions are timeless.
Yeah.
That's not going to change. Feedback is always going to be feedback. Effective listening is always going to be necessary. And I'm just taking these things out of the air. Everybody needs emotional intelligence. That doesn't change. And that's one of the, because things are changing so drastically, that's one of the biggest reasons these skills are so important, so
Yes.
that we can work together and collaborate together for our mutual benefit.
Boom. Drop the mic. All right. That is the perfect place to stop. We will be back again soon, so stay tuned because I think this is just going to be a whole series because it's just so much fun to talk to Ron. Ron, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your heart and your soul and your brilliance with all that you do. Everyone is so lucky who's gotten to work with you, and I know you're doing podcasts now. So if you need a great podcast host on leadership, R&D, training and development, Ron is your guy. And thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining me. This was
always my pleasure.
fast. All right. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Woo! Bye.
And bye.